The smell hit Jake Morrison first. It was a mix of unwashed bodas, fear, and something else he couldn't name. Something that made his stomach turn. He pulled his jacket tighter as he walked through the lower levels of Nexus Station, trying to find the fuel depot. Jake was just a simple cargo hauler. He flew his ship from planet to planet, carrying goods for anyone who could pay. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid the bills. Most of the time he kept his head down and minded his own business. That's how you survived in this part of the galaxy. But today was different. He turned a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. In front of him was a large open area filled with cages. Inside those cages were people. Not humans, but aliens from different worlds. They all had one thing in common. They looked scared and broken. "Fresh stock today," a voice called out. Jake looked toward the sound and saw a tall, green-skinned alien in expensive clothes. This was clearly the slave trader. "We have workers, servants, and pleasure slaves. All guaranteed healthy." Jake felt sick. He knew slavery existed in the outer systems, but he had never seen it up close. Part of him wanted to turn around and leave. Part of him knew he should mind his own business, but he couldn't move. A crowd was gathering. Rich aliens in fancy clothes looked at the cages like they were shopping for furniture. They pointed and talked in low voices about which slaves might be useful. "Lot number 7, the trader announced. 2 guards dragged a small figure onto a raised platform. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was a female alien, but unlike any he had seen before. Her skin was a soft blue color like the sky on Earth at dawn. Her hair was white as snow and fell to her shoulders. She was small and thin, probably from not eating well. But what caught Jake's attention were her eyes. They were large and violet, like precious stones. Even from where he stood, Jake could see she was different from the other slaves. While they looked defeated, she still held her head up. She was scared, he could see that, but she wasn't broken. "Not yet?" "This is Kira," the trader said, grabbing her arm roughly. "She's from the Villani race. Her people had special mental powers before we conquered their world. She can read emotions and thoughts. Very useful for dopuses." Jake saw Kira wince as the trader's grip tightened. Her violet eyes scanned the crowd, and for a moment they met Jake's. He saw something in them that made his chest tight. It wasn't just fear. It was a silent plea for help. "The bidding starts at 500. "Credits," the trader announced. 600. Called out a fat alien with too many arms. 700. This came from a thin creature with black eyes. Jake watched in horror as the price went higher. These beings were talking about buying another person like she was a piece of equipment. They discussed what they would use her for, and Jake felt his anger growing. 1,000 credits, shouted a well-dressed alien near the front. This one had scales instead of skin and wore gold jewelry. "I have use for one with mind powers." The way he said it made Jake's blood run cold. He looked at Kira again. She was trying to stay brave, but he could see tears starting to form in her eyes. Her hands were shaking. "Going once." The trader called out. Jake thought about his savings account. He had been putting money away for months to upgrade his ship's engine. It was everything he had? Going twice. Jake thought about his father, who had taught him to always help others when he could. He thought about his mother, who said kindness was never wasted. The trader raised his hand to close the bidding. 2,000 credits. Jake heard himself shout. The crowd turned to look at him. Jake pushed through the other bidders until he reached the front. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. 2,000? The trader asked, looking surprised. "You are human, yes? Humans don't usually buy slaves?" "I'm buying her," Jake said firmly. His voice was steadier than he felt. The well-dressed alien with scales hissed angrily. 2,500. Jake's mouth went dry. That was more than he had. But then he thought about his watch. It was from Earth and worth at least 1,000 credits to collectors. And his father's ring, which he never took off. 3,000, Jake called out, plus this watch and this ring. He held up both items. The trader's eyes went wide when he saw them. Earth artifacts were valuable in this part of space. Deal accepted. The trader said quickly before anyone else could bid higher. Jake's legs felt weak. He had just spent everything he owned to buy a person. What was he going to do now? The guards brought Kira down from the platform. Up close, Jake could see the bruises on her arms and the way she flinched when anyone moved too quickly. When they handed him the chain attached to her wrists, he felt sick again. "She's all yours, human," the trader said with an ugly grin. "Enjoy your purchase." Jake looked at Kira. She was staring at him with those violet eyes, trying to figure out what kind of master he would be. Jake could almost see her thinking, would he be cruel like the others? Would he hurt her? "Come on," Jake said softly. "Let's get out of here." As they walked away from the auction, Jake could feel eyes watching them. Some of the other bidders looked angry. The trader was already calling for the next lot. Behind them, the horrible business continued. Jake led Kira through the station toward his ship. She followed quietly, the chain between her wrists making soft clinking sounds. Jake hated that sound. It reminded him that she was still a prisoner. Even if she was his prisoner now, when they reached his ship, the Wanderer, Jake stopped at the airlock. He turned to look at Kira, who was watching him carefully. She probably expected him to hurt her or chain her up somewhere. Instead, Jake pulled out a small tool and broke the locks on her restraints. The chains fell to the floor with a loud clang. Kira stared at her free hands, then at Jake. Her eyes were wide with shock. "You're safe now," Jake said simply. "I'm going to take you somewhere far from here, somewhere you can be free." For the first time since he had seen her, Kira's expression changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Something that might have been hope. Jake picked up the broken chains and threw them in a waste disposal unit. He never wanted to see them again. "Welcome aboard," he said to Kira, and opened the door to his ship. Behind them, Nexus Station continued its ugly business. But for one blue-skinned alien woman, everything had just changed. She didn't know it yet, but she had just met the human who would show her what kindness looked like, and Jake Morrison, simple cargo hauler, had just taken the first step on a journey that would change both their lives forever. The door to Jake's ship closed behind them with a soft hiss. Kira stood in the small entrance area, looking around nervously. Her freed hands rubbed the red marks where the chains had been. She kept glancing at Jake, trying to understand what he wanted from her. Jake noticed how she stayed close to the wall, ready to run if needed. He had seen scared animals act the same way. It made his heart ache. "Are you hungry?" Jake asked gently. Kira didn't answer. She just stared at him with those big violet eyes. Jake realized she probably didn't trust him yet. Why would she? Every other person who had owned her had probably hurt her. "The kitchen is this way," Jake said, walking slowly, so she could follow. "You don't have to be afraid. I won't hurt you." Kira followed him but kept her distance. Jake's ship was small but clean. There was a main living area with a couch and table, a tiny kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and the cockpit where he flew the ship. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. Jake opened a cabinet and pulled out some food. He had protein bars, dried fruit, and some soup packets. Nothing special, but it was better than what slaves usually got fed. "Sit down," Jake said, pointing to the couch. "Please." Kira sat on the very edge of the couch like she was ready to jump up and run. Jake heated up some soup and brought it to her with a spoon. When he held it out, she flinched. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "It's just food. You must be hungry." Kira took the bowl with shaking hands. She smelled the soup first, probably checking if it was poisoned. When she decided it was safe, she ate it quickly, like someone might take it away. From her. Jake watched her eat and felt angry again. Not at her, but at the people who had made her so scared. How long had it been since she had a proper meal? How long since someone had been kind to her? "There's more if you want it," Jake said when she finished. Kira looked surprised. She nodded slightly, and Jake brought her another bowl. This time she ate more slowly. While she ate, Jake went to his bedroom and gathered some blankets and pillows. When he came back, Kira was watching him carefully. "This is for you," Jake said, putting the bedding on the couch. "You can sleep here tonight. Tomorrow I'll set up the spare room properly." Kira looked confused. She pointed at Jake, then at herself, then at the bedroom. Jake realized what she was thinking. No, Jake said quickly. You sleep here, alone. I sleep in my room, alone. I'm not going to... I won't touch you, ever, not unless you want me to help you if you're hurt or something. Kira's eyes went wide. She clearly hadn't expected this. Jake could see her trying to figure out if he was lying. Look, Jake said, sitting down across from her but not too close. I know you don't trust me. I understand why, but I need you to know something. I didn't buy you to hurt you or use you. I bought you to set you free. Kira tilted her head, still not speaking. Jake wondered if she even understood his language well enough to know what he was saying. Do you understand me? Jake asked. Can you speak? For a long moment, Kira was quiet. Then in a voice so soft Jake almost missed it, she spoke. Why? She whispered. Her voice was beautiful, even though it was scared. It had a musical quality that Jake had never heard before. Why what? Jake asked gently. Why did you save me? Kira's words were careful, like she was still learning the language. What do you want from me? Jake thought about how to explain it. How could he tell her that he had saved her simply because it was the right thing to do? That seeing her on that platform had broken something inside him? I saved you because no one should be owned by another person, Jake said finally. You're not a thing to be bought and sold. You're a person, you deserve to be free. Tears started, falling down Kira's blue cheeks. She wiped them away quickly like she was ashamed of crying. No one has ever said that to me before, she whispered. Jake felt that anger rising in him again. What kind of life had she lived? What had been done to her? What's your real name? Jake asked. Not the name they gave you at the auction? Your real name. Kira, she said. That is my real name. I was lucky they didn't change it. Kira, Jake repeated. That's a beautiful name. I'm Jake. Jake Morrison. Jake, Kira said, trying out the sound. You are ... different from the others. Different. How? Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. Your emotions taste different, she said. The others, their emotions were dark and sharp, like broken glass. Yours are ... warm, like sunlight. Jake remembered what the slave trader had said about her. People having mental powers. She could read emotions. That must have made her suffering even worse, feeling the cruelty of everyone who hurt her. What do you feel from me now? Jake asked. Kira closed her eyes for a moment. Sadness. You are. Sad for me and ... kindness? Real kindness? I had almost forgotten what that felt like. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jake could see that Kira was getting tired. She kept blinking slowly, like she was fighting sleep. You should rest, Jake said, standing up. We'll be traveling for a few days. You're safe here. The door locks from the inside if that makes you feel better. Kira nodded and curled up on the couch with the blankets Jake had given her. She looked so small and fragile. Jake, she said as he started to leave. Yes? Thank you. The words were so quiet he almost didn't hear them. You don't need to thank me, Kira. Just get some rest. Jake went to his room and closed the door. He lay down on his bed but couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Kira had said, that he was different. He didn't feel different. He just felt like he had done what anyone with a heart would do, but maybe that was the problem. Maybe not enough people in this galaxy had hearts anymore. Through the thin walls, Jake could hear Kira moving around on the couch. She was probably still scared, still waiting for something bad to happen. It would take time for her to understand that she was truly safe. Jake stared at the ceiling and made a promise to himself. He would be patient, he would be kind, he would show Kira that not everyone in the universe wanted to hurt her, and maybe, just maybe, he could help her remember what it felt like to be free. In the morning, Jake woke up to the smell of cooking food. He got up and found Kira in the kitchen, making breakfast with the supplies he had shown her the night before. Good morning, Jake said carefully. Kira looked up at him. She still looked scared, but not as much as before. I made food, she said. I wanted to ... help. You don't have to cook for me, Jake said. You're not my servant. Kira's hands stopped moving. She looked confused again. Then what am I? She asked. Jake thought about it. What was she? She wasn't his slave. She wasn't his servant. She wasn't his property. You're my friend, Jake said finally. If you want to be, Kira stared at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he had met her, she smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. Friend? She repeated, like she was testing the word. Yes, I would like to be your friend, Jake Morrison. And in that moment, Jake knew that saving her had been the best decision he had ever made. 3 weeks had passed since Jake rescued Kira from the slave market. They had traveled to 4 different space stations, and Jake was amazed at how much his life had changed. At first, Kira had stayed quiet and scared. She would jump at loud noises and always sat where she could see the door. But slowly she began to relax. She started asking questions about Jake's work and about the different planets they visited. Why do you carry other people's things? Kira asked one morning as they flew toward Trading Post 7. Jake was drinking coffee in the pilot's seat while Kira sat nearby, watching the stars go by through the window. It's my job, Jake explained. People need things moved from one place to another. I pick up their cargo and deliver it. They pay me, and I use that money to buy fuel and food. But you don't make much money, Kira said. It wasn't a question. Her empathic abilities let her sense Jake's worries about finances. No, Jake admitted. Business has been slow lately. That's why I was at Nexus Station, looking for cheap fuel. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. I could help you make more money. Jake turned to look at her. What do you mean? When we meet traders, I can feel their emotions, Kira explained. I know when they are lying or trying to cheat you. I know when they are desperate and will accept lower prices. I could help you negotiate better deals. Jake had never thought about using Kira's abilities that way. It seemed almost like cheating. But then again, if other traders were trying to cheat him, maybe it would just make things fair. Are you sure you want to help? Jake asked. You don't owe me anything. I want to be useful, Kira said firmly. You saved me. You gave me a home. Let me help you in return. Their first test came that afternoon. Jake had arranged to meet a trader named Brix, who wanted to ship mining equipment to the outer colonies. Brix was a large alien with gray skin and 4 arms. He had a reputation for being tough in negotiations. Morrison, Brix called out when he saw Jake. Good to see you again. I have a job that might interest you. Jake and Kira walked over to where Brix stood next to several large crates. What's the cargo? Jake asked. Mining drills and processors, Brix said. Need them delivered to new series. Standard rate, 500 credits. Jake was about to accept when he felt Kira gently touch his arm. When he looked at her, she shook her head. Slightly. 500 seems low for that distance, Jake said, taking Kira's hint. Fuel costs alone would be 300. Brix's 4 arms waved dismissively. Take it or leave it, Morrison. Plenty of other haulers looking for work. Again, Kira touched Jake's arm. This time she held up 7 fingers where Brix couldn't see. 700, Jake said firmly. And you pay for half the fuel up front. Brix looked annoyed. 600, final offer. Kira nodded slightly. Jake could tell she sensed that Brix would go higher if pushed, but 600 was fair. Deal, Jake said after they loaded the cargo and Brix paid them. Jake and Kira walked back to their ship. Jake was amazed. He usually would have accepted the first offer Brix made. How did you know he would pay more? Jake asked. His emotions were all wrong, Kira explained. He was pretending to be casual, but inside he was worried. He needed this cargo delivered quickly, and we were his best option. He would have paid up to 800 if necessary. 800? Jake stopped walking. Why didn't you tell me to ask for that? Because 600 was fair, Kira said. Simply, he was willing to pay more because he was desperate, but taking advantage of desperate people is wrong. You taught me that. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. Kira was not only helping him make money, but she was doing it with honor. She was learning his values and making them her own. Over the next few months, Jake and Kira became an excellent team. Kira's empathic abilities helped them avoid bad deals and dangerous clients. She could tell when someone was lying about their cargo or planning to cheat them. Jake's reputation for being honest and reliable grew, and they started getting better jobs, but Kira brought more than just business skills to their partnership. She was incredibly smart and had been a teacher on her homeworld before it was conquered. She knew about different alien cultures and languages. She helped Jake understand customs and traditions that had confused him before. On Altair Prime, you should never look directly at Altarian's third eye, Kira explained as they prepared to meet a new client. It's considered very rude. I didn't even know they had a third eye, Jake said. It's hidden under their forehead. Scale, Kira said. And when greeting them, you should bow slightly and keep your hands visible. They evolved from prey animals, so hidden hands make them nervous. With Kira's help, Jake's meetings went much smoother. Clients liked dealing with someone who understood their culture. Word spread that Jake Morrison was not only honest and reliable, but also respectful and professional. Their ship, the Wanderer, was busier than it had ever been, but success brought new problems. They were delivering medical supplies to a frontier colony when Kira first noticed they were being followed. Jake, she said quietly as they walked through the spaceport. There are 3 beings watching us. They've been following us since we landed. Jake didn't turn around, but he trusted Kira's senses completely. What do you feel from them? Anger. And ... hunting emotions, like predators tracking prey. Jake's blood went cold. He had hoped that buying Kira would be the end of it, but apparently someone wasn't happy about losing her. Can you tell what species they are? Jake asked. 2 are Dominion military. The third is ... I'm not sure. His emotions are very controlled. Professional, probably a bounty hunter. Jake's worst fears were confirmed. The Dominion Empire didn't forget when someone interfered with their slave trade. They had sent people to get Kira back. We need to get back to the ship, Jake said. Quickly. But don't run. We don't want them to know we've spotted them. They walked back to the Wanderer as casually as they could. Jake kept his hand near the small blaster he carried for protection. He had never had to use it, but he would, if necessary. As soon as they were aboard, Jake started the engines. But before they could take off, their ship's communication system crackled to life. Attention, human vessel, a cold voice said. You are harboring stolen Dominion property. Surrender the Villani female, and you will not be harmed. Jake looked at Kira. She was scared, but there was determination in her violet eyes. Never, Jake said into the communicator. She's not property. She's a free person. You have 10 seconds to comply, or we will board your ship by force. Jake didn't wait 10 seconds. He pushed the engines to full power and launched the Wanderer into space. Behind them, he could see a Dominion patrol ship giving chase. They're faster than us, Kira said, watching the scanner. But we're smarter, Jake replied. And we know the system better than they do. Jake flew the Wanderer through an asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover. The larger Dominion ship had trouble following them through the narrow spaces between asteroids, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion wouldn't give up easily. They would keep coming until they got what they wanted. As they jumped into hyperspace toward their next destination, Jake made a decision. He couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, he would have to make a stand. Kira, he said, turning to look at her. I want you to know something. No matter what happens, I will never let them take you back. You're free now, and you'll stay free, I promise. Kira reached over and took his hand. Her blue skin was warm against his. I know, she said softly. And Jake, I'm not going anywhere. We're partners now. We face this together. Jake squeezed her hand gently. In just a few months, this scared slave girl had become his business partner, his friend, and something more. He wasn't sure exactly what that something more was yet, but he knew he would protect it with his life. Behind them, the stars streaked by as they fled into the unknown. Ahead of them lay danger and uncertainty, but they would face it together. The Wanderer shook violently as another blast hit their shields. Jake gripped the controls tighter, trying to keep their ship steady. They had been running from the Dominion. Hunters for 3 days now, and their luck was finally running out? Shields down to 30%. Kira called out from the co-pilot seat. She had learned to help Jake fly the ship during their months together. They're getting closer. Jake looked at the scanner. The Dominion ship was right behind them, and there was nowhere left to run. They were in an empty part of space with no asteroid fields or space stations to hide behind. There, Kira pointed at the scanner, a planet. It's not on any of the star charts. Jake saw it too. A small, rocky world with no signs of civilization. It wasn't much, but it was their only chance. Hold on, Jake said, turning the ship toward the planet. This is going to be rough. The Dominion ship fired again. This time the blast hit their engine. Alarms started blaring throughout the ship. We're going down. Jake shouted over the noise. The Wanderer fell through the planet's atmosphere. Like a burning star. Jake fought to control their crash landing, but the ship was badly damaged. They hit the ground hard, bouncing and sliding across rocky terrain before finally coming to a stop. Jake's head was spinning. There was blood on his forehead where he had hit the control panel. Next to him, Kira was unconscious but breathing. Kira, Jake said, gently shaking her shoulder. Kira, wake up. We need to move. Her violet eyes opened slowly. Jake, are we alive? For now, Jake said, helping her stand. But they'll be landing soon. We need to get away from the ship. Jake grabbed their emergency supplies, food, water, medical kit, and his blaster. The ship's computer was damaged, but he could see that this planet had breathable air and normal gravity. They could survive here, at least for a while. They had been walking for an hour when they heard the sound of engines overhead. The Dominion ship was landing near the crash site. This way, Jake said, leading Kira toward some large rocks that would give them cover. They found a small cave hidden behind fallen boulders. It wasn't much, but it would hide them from the hunter's scanners. Jake used his emergency beacon to seal the entrance, making it look like solid rock from the outside. For the next 2 days, they stayed hidden in the cave. At night, they could see lights in the distance where the hunters were searching for them. During the day, they heard aircraft flying overhead. On the third day, the sound stopped. Maybe they gave up, Kira said hopefully. Jake shook his head. They're not giving up. They're just changing tactics. They'll wait for us to come out, then follow us back to our hiding place. They were trapped. The hunters had them surrounded, and sooner or later they would have to leave the cave for more water. That night, as they sat by a small fire Jake had built, Kira moved closer to him. The cave was cold, and they only had one blanket. Jake, she said softly, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really save me? I mean, the real reason. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He had asked himself that question many times. Over the past months, I don't know, he said finally. I looked at you on that platform and I couldn't walk away. You looked so brave even though you were scared. I've never met anyone like you before. Kira smiled. You've never met anyone like me because I've never been like this before? The person I am now, confident, happy, free, that person only exists because of you. That's not true, Jake said. You were always strong. I just helped you remember. Jake Morrison, Kira said, turning to face him fully. You are the kindest, most honorable man in the galaxy. And I love you. Jake's heart stopped. Had she really just said that? I love you too, Jake said, the words coming out before he could stop them. I've loved you for months, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I don't love you because I owe you, Kira said, taking his hands in hers. I love you because you're good and brave and you make me laugh. I love you because you see me as a person, not as property or a tool. I love you because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm home. Jake leaned forward and kissed her gently. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted like starlight and freedom. Will you marry me? Jake asked when they broke apart. Yes, Kira said, tears of joy running down her blue cheeks. Yes, I will marry you, Jake Morrison. They had no rings, no priest, no guests. But under the alien stars, with danger all around them, they made promises to each other that would last forever. I promise to love you and protect you for the rest of my life, Jake said. I promise to stand by your side through everything. Kira replied, in joy and sorrow, in safety and danger, until the stars burn out. They held each other close, and for a moment Jake forgot about the hunters outside. For a moment there was only him and Kira and their love, but their moment of happiness didn't last long. On the fourth morning, the hunters found them. Jake woke up to the sound of blasters being fired at the cave entrance. The rock he had used to seal the opening was being destroyed bit by bit. They found us, Kira said, grabbing the emergency supplies. The back of the cave, Jake said. There might be another way out. They ran deeper into the cave as the hunters broke through the entrance. Jake could hear their voices echoing behind them. Split up, one of them ordered. The human is armed and dangerous. The female is worth more alive, but kill her if you have to. Jake and Kira found a narrow passage at the back of the cave. They crawled through it on their hands and knees, trying to be as quiet as possible. The passage led to another cave, this one much larger. But as soon as they stood up, they heard footsteps behind them. One of the hunters had followed them through the passage. End of the line, the hunter said, pointing his weapon at them. He was a large alien with gray skin and red eyes. Come quietly, and I won't hurt you. Jake stepped in front of Kira, his own blaster ready. She's not going anywhere with you. You can't fight all of us, human, the hunter said. My partners will be here soon. Maybe not, Jake said. But I can fight you, the hunter laughed. You're willing to die for a slave? She's not a slave, Jake said firmly. She's my wife, and yes, I'm willing to die for her. The hunter raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Kira stepped out from behind Jake. Wait, she said, her voice strange and powerful. Look at me. The hunter turned toward her, and Jake saw something amazing happen. Kira's eyes began to glow with a soft violet light. She was using her empathic powers in a way Jake had never seen before. You don't want to hurt us, Kira said, her voice echoing strangely in the cave. You're tired of hunting. Tired of violence. You want to go home to your family. The hunter's weapon began to shake in his hands. What, what are you doing to me? I'm showing you who you really are, Kira said. Under all that anger and greed, you're just someone who wants to be loved. Someone who wants peace. Jake watched in amazement as the hunter's expression changed. The cruelty faded from his red eyes, replaced by confusion and then sadness. I can't do this anymore, the hunter whispered. He dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. I'm so tired of hurting people. Then stop, Kira said gently. Choose a different path. The hunter looked up at her with wonder. You could have made me kill myself. Why didn't you? Because everyone deserves a chance to change, Kira said. Even you. The hunter nodded and stood up slowly. I'll tell the others I lost your trail. That will give you time to get away. Thank you, Jake said. No, the hunter replied, looking at Kira. Thank you for showing me there's another way. He walked back through the passage, leaving his weapon behind. Jake and Kira waited until they were sure he was gone, then made their way out of the cave. In the distance, they could see the Dominion ship taking off, leaving the planet. You did something incredible back there, Jake said as they watched the ship disappear into space. I showed him the truth about himself, Kira said. Sometimes. That's more powerful than any weapon. Jake pulled her close and kissed her again. I love you, Mrs. Morrison. I love you too, Mr. Morrison, Kira replied. Smiling, they still had to find a way off the planet and back to civilization. They still had to worry about other hunters coming after them. But they had each other, and their love had already proven stronger than hate. Together, they began the walk back to their crashed ship, ready to face whatever came next. 5 years later, Jake stood on the porch of his house watching the two suns set over New Terra. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and purple, colors that still amazed him even after all this time living on this frontier world. Papa! Papa! A small voice called out behind him. Jake turned to see his 4-year-old daughter running toward him. She looked like a perfect mix of him and Kira. She had Jake's brown hair, but Kira's violet eyes and blue-tinted skin. Her name was Hope, and she was the light of their lives? What is it, little star? Jake asked, scooping her up in his arms. Mama says dinner is ready, Hope said, wrapping her small arms around his neck. And she says to tell you the new people are here? Jake looked toward the house and saw Kira standing in the doorway. Even after 5 years of marriage, she still took his breath away. She was wearing a simple dress, and her white hair was tied back in a braid. But her smile was as beautiful as the day he first saw it in that cave on the unnamed planet. The new arrivals? Jake asked Kira as he carried Hope inside. Yes, Kira said, giving him a quick kiss. 3 families this time. They came on the transport ship this morning, all former slaves, just like the others. Jake nodded. Over the years, their little house on New Terra had become known throughout the outer colonies as a safe place. Word had spread among freed slaves and refugees that Jake and Kira Morrison would help anyone who needed a new start. It had begun by accident. After they escaped from the unnamed planet, they had decided to settle on New Terra, a frontier world far from Dominion space. Jake used his savings to buy a small plot of land and start a shipping business that operated only in free territories. But their first year on New Terra, a desperate family had shown up at their door. They were escaped slaves who had heard about the human who had freed a Villani woman. They begged Jake and Kira to help them. We can't turn them away, Kira had said. We know what it's like to be hunted and afraid. So they had helped that first family find work and a place to live. Then word spread, and more people came. Soon, Jake and Kira were running an unofficial underground network that helped freed slaves start new lives. Where are they staying? Jake asked as they sat down for dinner. The Hendersons said they could house 1 family in their barn, Kira said, serving Hope some soup. The Chuns have room for another. The 3rd family. Well, I told them they could stay in our guest room until we find something permanent. Jake smiled. Their guest room was always full these days. In 5 years, they had helped over 200 people find new homes and new lives. Any word from Captain Torres? Jake asked. She sent a message this morning, Kira said. Her ship rescued 12 more people from a Dominion prison transport. She's bringing them here next week. Captain Maria Torres was one of many ship captains who now worked with Jake and Kira's network. She was a former military officer who had become disgusted with how the galaxy treated its most vulnerable people. Her ship, the Liberation, specialized in intercepting slave transports and freeing their cargo. After dinner, Jake walked outside to check on their guests. The 3 families were sitting around a small fire, sharing stories and getting to know each other. Jake could see the hope in their faces, the same hope he had seen in Kira's eyes years ago. Mr. Morrison? A young alien woman approached him. She was from a species Jake didn't recognize, with golden skin and large green eyes. I wanted to thank you for helping us. We didn't know where else to go. You don't need to thank me, Jake sighed. Everyone deserves a chance at freedom. Is it true what they say? The woman asked. That you started all this just to save your wife? Jake looked back at the house where he could see Kira through the window reading a bedtime story, too. Hope? I didn't start anything, Jake said. I just made one choice to do the right thing. Everything else grew from that. One choice changed the galaxy, the woman said softly. No, Jake replied. One choice changed 2 lives. Then those 2 lives changed more lives, and those lives changed even more. That's how change really happens, 1 person at a time, 1 choice at a time. Later that night, after their guests had gone to sleep and Hope was tucked into her bed, Jake and Kira sat together on their porch swing. Kira's head rested on Jake's shoulder as they watched the stars come out. Do you ever regret it? Kira asked, quietly. Giving up your old life for all this? Jake thought about his answer. His old life had been simple and predictable. He had flown his ship alone, worried only about himself, made enough money to get by. Now his life was complicated and unpredictable. He worried about hundreds of people, worked harder than ever, and lived constantly under the threat that Dominion forces might find their network. Never, Jake said, kissing the top of Kira's head. My old life was just surviving. This is living. I love you, Jake Morrison, Kira whispered. I love you too, Kira Morrison, Jake replied. They sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the peace of the evening. In the distance, they could hear laughter from the guest house where some of the rescued families were still talking. It was the sound of people who had found Hope again. Mama, Papa, Hope's voice called from inside the house. I had a bad dream. Kira started to get up, but Jake stopped her. I'll go, he said. Jake found Hope sitting up in her small bed, tears on her cheeks. She had inherited some of Kira's empathic abilities, which sometimes made her sensitive to other people's emotions. What's wrong, little star? Jake asked, sitting on her bed. I felt sad feelings, Hope said, from the new people. They're scared. And sad? Jake pulled Hope onto his lap. They are sad, he said gently. They've been hurt by bad people, but you know what? What? Tomorrow they'll be a little less sad? And the day after that even less. Because now they're safe and people care about them, just like what happened with Mama. Mama was sad when you found her? Hope asked. Very sad, Jake said. But love made her happy again, and love will make the new people happy too. Hope thought about this. Will I help make them happy? You already do, Jake said. Every time you smile at them, every time you play with their children, you show them that this is a safe place where families can be together and kids can be kids. Hope nodded seriously. I'll be extra smiley tomorrow. Jake tucked her back into bed and kissed her forehead. Sleep well, little star. Tomorrow is going to be a good day. As Jake walked back to the porch, he thought about how much his life had changed. 5 years ago, he had been a lonely cargo hauler with no family and no purpose beyond paying his bills. Now he was a husband, a father, and a leader in a movement that spanned dozens of worlds. But the most amazing thing was how it had all started with one simple decision, to do the right thing when it mattered. He found Kira still sitting on the swing, but now she wasn't alone. One of their guests, an elderly alien man, was sitting nearby. They were talking quietly about something. Everything okay? Jake asked as he sat back down next to Kira. Mr. Vex was just telling me about his granddaughter, Kira said. She was separated from him when they were captured. She's only 8 years old. Jake felt the familiar anger rise in his chest. Even after all these years, stories like this still made him furious at the injustice in the galaxy. We'll find her, Jake said firmly. I'll contact Torres and the other captains. We'll search every prison ship and slave market until we bring her home. Mr. Vex looked at Jake with tears in his eyes. You would do that for a little girl you've never met? Every person matters, Jake said. Every family deserves to be together. We'll find her. As Mr. Vex went back to the guest house with new hope in his heart, Kira squeezed Jake's hand. You know, she said, I think Hope is right. Tomorrow is going to be a good day. Jake looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Mr. Vex's granddaughter was waiting to be rescued. Somewhere out there, Captain Torres and her crew were planning their next mission. Somewhere out there, families were being torn apart by cruelty and greed. But here on New Terra, people who had lost everything were finding new reasons to hope. Here, former slaves were becoming teachers, doctors, farmers, and friends. Here, children like Hope were growing up in a world where kindness mattered more than profit. Jake Morrison had started as one man trying to save one woman. Now he was part of something bigger, a network of good people who refused to accept that suffering was inevitable. Yes, Jake said, pulling Kira closer as the twin moons rose over their peaceful world. Tomorrow is going to be a very good day. Indeed, in the distance, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Jake made a wish, the same wish he made every night, that tomorrow they would save more lives, reunite more families, and prove once again that love was stronger than hate. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was also full of people like Jake and Kira Morrison, people who believed that everyone deserved a chance at happiness, and that made all the difference.